Welcome back everyone to another episode of Style Drops. Today I want to talk about Gail's lifelong love affair with cottages. That love affair with cottages started when she was very young, with a storybook version that was very close to her childhood home. With its mushroom-style roof, arched top front door, and just the general overall quaintness of the dwelling, it captured her at first sight. She could never understand why so many gravitated to mansions when cottages are literally magical to her. Then she read the book The Great Gatsby, and was introduced to Nick Carraway, who lived in a modest little cottage sandwiched between two enormous mansions on Long Island. Gatsby's gaudy palace on one side and the Buchanan's old money estate on the other. This is a part of The Great Gatsby that always resonated with Gail, though probably not for the reasons F. Scott Fitzgerald intended. While the entire plot revolves around people obsessed with those mansions and what they represent, Gail always thought Nick had the better deal. Give her the cottage every time, with cozy as her safe word. She is completely fine with an assessment that having a place where she doesn't need a golf cart to go from one side of her interior to the other is the perfect ideal for her. Let's be honest about mansions for a moment, because we're all supposed to pretend they're aspirational, when most of them are actually nightmares disguised as status symbols. Mansions are impressive to look at, sure, but they're terrible to actually live in, unless you enjoy the specific experience of feeling small and lonely in your own home. Mansions have rooms you forget exist, rooms you only visit when you're giving tours to guests who are pretending to be impressed, while they're secretly calculating your property taxes and judging your decor choices. Rooms that exist purely for theoretical purposes. The formal dining room you use twice a year, the sitting room where nobody actually sits, the library where the leather-bound books with gold leaf titles look more like props than reading material. A cottage doesn't need to apologize for being small. It embraces intimacy as a feature, not a flaw. Low ceilings that create coziness instead of cathedral heights that make you feel like you're living in an airport terminal. Rooms that flow into each other naturally because there's no space for those awkward transitional hallways that exist purely to make you walk more steps between rooms, and windows that let in light stream at all hours of the day. The scale of everything in a cottage is designed for an actual human, rather than theoretical grandeur. You can reach things. You can hear conversations happening in the next room without requiring an intercom system. You can heat the entire space without choosing between financial ruin and wearing winter coats indoors. You can clean your entire home in a reasonable time frame, without requiring a team or an entire day's commitment. Cottages have nooks. Blessed, wonderful nooks where you can curl up with a book, a cup of tea, and the secure knowledge that you're in a space designed for comfort rather than performance. You can't create proper nooks in mansions. They're too busy trying to be impressive or posing for architectural photography. But let's get back to Nick's cottage in The Great Gatsby, because that little house represents something important that everyone misses while they're busy focusing on Gatsby's parties and Daisy's voice full of money and all that dramatic nonsense about the green light. Nick's cottage is described as an eyesore compared to its mansion neighbors, but it's also described as cozy, manageable, and actually pleasant to live in. He can afford it on his modest income. He can maintain it himself. He can invite people over without requiring staff or elaborate preparations. It's a home, not a statement or a performance venue or a monument to excess. While Gatsby is throwing elaborate parties for hundreds of people he doesn't know, and the Buchanans are rattling around in their enormous estate being miserable and careless, Nick is living in an appropriate scale to his actual life. Nick is the only character in that entire tragedy who seems even remotely content with his living situation. Everyone else is either performing for an audience, maintaining appearances, or living in spaces that reflect who they're pretending to be, rather than who they actually are. Nick's cottage lets him just exist. Such a revolutionary concept, don't you think? The cultural programming around big houses is relentless and largely unquestioned, and that bigger is better. More rooms equal more success. Square footage correlates directly with worthiness. Having excess space you don't need or use is somehow aspirational rather than wasteful. We're supposed to want the mansion, and we're supposed to work toward the McMansion, with an underlying subculture to feel like we failed if we end up in the cottage, even if the cottage actually serves our lives better and could make us genuinely happier with its smaller eco-footprint than the mansion ever would. The McMansion represents making it, in ways that have nothing to do with actual quality of life, and everything to do with external validation and status signaling. Here's what needs to be said clearly. Choosing cozy isn't settling. It's not making do with less because you can't afford more. It's actively preferring a certain scale and intimacy of living that mansions or McMansions can't provide, no matter how expensive they are, or how impressive they look from the outside. Choosing cottage-scale living when you could afford larger is saying, I know what I need, I trust my own preferences, and I'm not designing my life around impressing people or meeting external expectations about what success should look like. That's not settling, that's clarity. Every room in a cottage gets used regularly, which means you're not maintaining space that sits empty most of the time, serving no purpose other than existing. Cottage living forces intentionality. You can't just accumulate because space is finite. You have to make choices about what you keep, what you display, and what prioritize. That constraint creates more thoughtful, curated living, rather than the unchecked accumulation that large homes enable and even encourage. Designing a cottage is actually more challenging and more rewarding than designing a mansion or even a McMansion, because every choice matters when space is limited. You can't hide mediocre design decisions behind sheer square footage. You can't throw money at problems and call it solved. You have to think carefully about proportion, scale, functionality, and how every element relates to everything else. But that constraint creates better design. It forces creativity, resourcefulness, and genuine problem solving, rather than just buying more storage or adding another room. It rewards thoughtfulness and punishes carelessness in ways that make you a better designer and create more satisfying spaces. Cottages also allow for bolder design choices because the scale is manageable. You can paint a room a dramatic color and live with it. If you hate it, repainting isn't a month-long project requiring professional crews with scaffolding. You can rearrange furniture on a whim without requiring a team and a forklift. Watching the mansion and McMansion dramas unfold from a cozy, human-scaled, perfectly manageable cottage where one could hear the rain on the roof and reach for their books on the shelves without a ladder, and heat every room without requiring a second mortgage. Gail would choose cozy over cavernous every single time, not because she's settling or lacking ambition, but because she stays in alignment with what she actually knows will make life pleasant on a daily basis. Also because she trusts her own preferences over cultural programming about what success should look like. Because she understands that bigger isn't always better, that intimacy has value, and that human-scaled living beats impressive square footage when it comes to actual happiness. Cozy isn't her safe word because she's afraid of grandeur. It's her safe word because she's figured out what actually matters, and it turns out that cottages and urban cottages were the right choice for her all along. Until next time, and please leave your favorite place in the comments below. Vote cottage or mansions. Plus, don't forget to like and subscribe too.